thank you so much for joining. We are so excited. Julie and I were just talking about this has been a labor of love for the last couple months. It feels really exciting that this moment is here. And I'm going to be honest, like when we started this, when we had the idea of running a benchmark survey on the state of nonprofit consulting, we had no idea what to expect. We didn't know how many respondents we'd get. We set big goals, in order to march towards creating something that was comprehensive. And y'all responded. The industry responded. We have almost 400 nonprofit consultants, full time and part time, that responded to the survey to give us an incredibly comprehensive look at trends, correlations, roadblocks, challenges that can help us all garner some direction on gaps we can close, things we can overcome, opportunities that are on the table that haven't been seized yet. So today we're really excited to move through the data, show you the different correlations that we've seen and analyzed, and give some anecdotal strategic advice on what it means for you and your business as you move through 2026. And our ultimate goal is that you're able to walk away from this session with really practical insights in terms of things that you can do tomorrow, this quarter, this year to help you move the needle on building a better business in your service of the nonprofit sector. So without further ado, I am going to hand the reins over to Julia, who is going to kick us off here. And thanks everybody for joining. I also want to let everyone know that if you have questions, if there are things that you want us to dive deeper into, stay active in the chat. We're going to keep an eye on it. We're going to extract your thoughts, your questions, your insights. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So let's get this thing started.
Cool. Thank you, Brian. Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Like Brian said, this has been something we've been pretty much all consumed with since the end of November. And we're just so thankful to all of you. I know so many of you who are on the call today contributed to the survey. So we're just so thankful to everyone who participated and that we were able to produce this for you all. So I just wanted to start by sharing our gratitude there.
Yeah,
To
give us a Zoom reaction if you contributed to the survey
Oh
at the
yeah,
end
that
of
would be
last year.
great.
That would be super cool.
Yeah, and our goal was, I mean, we basically hit it. We were aiming for 350 to 400. So, um,
Awesome. Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So yeah, so this study and the idea behind it was really that I'm sorry, if anyone doesn't know, I'm Julia Devine. I'm one of the co-founders of Relatable Nonprofit. I'm a nonprofit consultant myself. I started consulting for the sector in 2021 alongside Catalina Parker, who many of you know as well. We started our business supporting nonprofits, and we now also support nonprofit consultants who are working to build businesses. So the reason that we came up with this report is that a lot of our members in our community and a lot of the consultants that we work with will often ask us questions about what their hourly rate should be or what other people are charging, what other people are offering. Is there a certain niche or specialty that they should be positioning themselves in that makes them more money or is more in demand with nonprofits? And we knew from our experiences a little bit of this information, but there's not a lot out there. If you Google it, if you talk to people, it's very anecdotal. And we really could not find a study that had a large enough sample to really give us good benchmarks. So we decided, why don't we try and make our own? And now we have some amazing concrete evidence that you all can work with going forward. So, as Brian shared, 381 nonprofit consultants responded. The survey was conducted from right after Thanksgiving through the month of December. And we had 12 pillars. I think there were about 40 questions. So it's very comprehensive, a ton of information in this. What we're going to do today is pull out just the high level pieces that we thought would be interesting to share. The full report is 102 pages. We thought it would be like 50. It's actually 102. So a lot more out there than what we're sharing today, but this will give you a really high level information. And just a little bit on the methodology so you understand how these charts are sort of put together. But a lot of the responses that we pulled, most of the information was collected in ranges. So we didn't ask for like everyone's exact income, but do you make 0 to 25,000, 25 to 50,000, and so on, just to make it easier for people when they were responding and for us to tabulate the data. So what we're doing in most of these charts is we're using the median income when we're looking at income. So if someone reported that they make 75 to 100,000, then that's going to look at like 87,000 as the median income on that chart. So just to help you guys understand as we're interpreting, that's better than using averages just because there's a large skew, obviously, um, or a large range of information, and people made anywhere from zero to $500,000. So big range of information we're working with. And then we compared the groups and we looked for patterns. So you'll see some ranking patterns to understand sort of trends that we're seeing and any statistical significance between income and other variables in your business. And just a few limitations I did want to share. Obviously, the data is self-reported, so we're depending on the honesty of the respondents. There's range-based data, like I just said, so it's good for spotting patterns, but we're not using exact income totals. Not a nationally representative survey, although we do have people responding nationwide. And always important to remember correlation, not causation. So associations are not proving cause and effect, but we are seeing some predictive sort of correlations with certain things that are significant. So with that, I want to get started by showing you a picture, a snapshot of who participated and who is actually in the nonprofit sector as a consultant today. So the first charts we have here are consulting status distribution. So we had 196 full-time consultants, 119 part-time. That's really important later because incomes vary dramatically. 45 not currently, and then 21 who were active in the last 12 months. And this chart over here on the right is the years of experience, which is very interesting because you can see that most of the consultants who responded have actually started consulting in the last 6 years, which in my mind lines up pretty heavily with COVID. That's when I started consulting, was during 2020, 2021. And I know a lot of other people looking for more flexibility, which was another response in the data, was that was the number one thing people are looking for when they start consulting. Flexibility, work from home, being able to travel, all of these things have been sort of feeding this shift into a more flexible, autonomous work environment. So that's my interpretation of why we have so many people joining the consulting sector in the last 6 years. Business structure wise, obviously a lot of solo practitioners, very common in early stage consulting, although we do have 15% who are small firms and a small amount that are in that larger, mid to large size firm. So a lot of newbies, a lot of part-time people who are just doing it on their own, to be expected with a very new and growing sector. And consulting specialties, this is really interesting. We'll talk about it more later. You have a ton of different specialties, right? So obviously we've got the development heavy, strategic planning up top, but we have operations, program design, grant writing, marketing, comms, executive coaching, a ton of different things that people are doing. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, but not a whole lot of correlation between what people are offering and their income. So those of you who wonder, like, hey, am I offering the right thing? Am I going to be able to make money doing this? It turns out that there's not a whole lot of statistical significance between what you choose to offer. As long as there's demand for it, people are probably willing to pay for it. So I thought that was interesting. Age distribution, also something to take note of. Most consultants who responded fall into this 35 to 54 range, and overwhelmingly female, 75% female in the nonprofit consulting segment here. So we know the nonprofit sector tends to lean female just in general, but I thought this was very interesting to note. So the snapshot, the majority of respondents who answered all the relevant questions are female solo practitioners, age 35 to 54, and most began consulting in the last 6 years. So that's,
Yeah, and just like a couple takeaways and trends, and there's more when we get to revenue and pricing that I think affirm a few of these things, but I think some overall trends that we're seeing, and this aligns with other research and other studies that have been done, including that, the nonprofit consulting sector is going to grow from now until 2033 into a $20 billion industry. So there are signals that this is a growing industry. And we look at the data that we've collected and we say, okay, it's relatively young. Most people started in the last 6 years. A lot of people are overwhelmingly solo practitioners, and there's a healthy amount that are still doing this part-time. And so there's a lot of factors to say that like this is a ripe opportunity to double down, to keep going, to continue to build your business because you already have the momentum. There's already wind in your sails around what you've started to build, whether you're part time or full time. And I think there's some really interesting takeaways as it comes to sales practices, revenue, which we're about to get to in a moment, that I think illuminate some areas of incredible opportunity to help you all grow your businesses.
Yeah, I want to talk about, oh, we'll get to that in a minute, but I want to definitely talk about the part-time and full-time divide because that's the largest, I think, opportunity for growth here. So, strong hourly rate, guys, we have the data. It's in. Here it is. We know what the hourly rates break out to be now, and it's actually fairly healthy. So, we have the majority charging more than $100 an hour, and 46% are charging more than 150 an hour. So, and only a quarter here charging below $100 an hour. So, I think this is very healthy. If you're someone in the audience who's in that under $100 an hour category, this is definitely something that you can work on. We've worked with plenty of consultants who needed to restructure their agreements to get to a fair hourly rate. But I like to see this 150 and above here. So you guys can benchmark this. Now you know when you're charging, this is what you're seeing in the market. And total consulting earnings. So when I first saw this chart, I'm like, there's a lot going on here on the left. So first of all, I was like, oh no, is no one making any money? When I saw this under 25,000 category being so high. And then I see over here, there's people making 150, 200, all the way up to 500,000 plus. So that was my first pass. And then I thought, wait a minute, let me break this out by full-time and part-time consultants. So here you can see that part-time consulting, the median is that under 25,000 category coming out to about 12,500 for part-time. Now, if any of you part-time people are on this call, you might be working full-time still, you're taking one gig here and there, you're doing something on the weekends, you're doing speaking engagements. So that I think is about fair. And then for full-time consultants, about 148 people who responded saying they're full-time. The median is that 87,000 mark. So obviously you can see here that it actually does go up to 500,000. And I do know people who are making that much as consultants. So if you are thinking, should I be transitioning full time? I don't know if I'm going to make as much. The data does bear it out that we see that full-time consultants are making 7 times more than those who are part-time. So I thought that was really interesting to see, and also to see the opportunity that you can actually make 500 or more in consulting. All right, so here is the meat of what we found around revenue. And we found there's several data points that have a statistical correlation, but the top 5 that we found with earnings were the following. So project fee range, that was the strongest correlation. So what you're actually charging per project has the highest correlation with overall income. Clients served annually. We'll get to that in a minute, but 4 to 6 clients seem to be a sweet spot for where people started to actually earn meaningful income. Hours worked per week, again, that goes towards full-time versus part-time consulting. Years of experience did actually factor in. And percentage of recurring income, we'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. People who have more recurring income, not 100%. 100% of recurring income actually was capped at a lower income level, but people who had a healthy amount of recurring income built into their monthly predictable income were actually earning more on average. So these are the 5. And project fee range I find the most interesting. We know just from our experience that the number one pricing toolkit that we have that so many people download, most people who took the survey downloaded this, is our pricing calculator where we actually teach you how to price your services. I think this is one of the easiest, simplest missed opportunities that so many consultants fall into this trap where they underprice because they don't know how to estimate their time, they don't know how to estimate their cost, they're not sure how to create a proper scope of work. And so you end up submitting a project proposal that is vastly undercharging, and then you're stuck completing the work at a much lower hourly rate. So understanding your hourly rate, understanding what to charge as a project fee, how to scope your work can drastically increase your overall revenue from what I'm seeing here. And also clients served annually, we can talk about that as well, but that's just another great opportunity to increase your revenue. Brian, were you going to respond?
Yeah, it's just like doubling down. Like I think when you think about recurring income, I think the big takeaway here is that recurring income is a great stabilizer,
Yeah.
but doubling down on recurring revenue isn't necessarily going to scale your revenue the way that like that I would anticipate that it might, which I think was an interesting takeaway that like there's a low to moderate correlation to higher earnings with recurring revenue, yet there's a higher correlation of making more revenue when you focus on project fee. So again, the second takeaway here is that like it's very, very important that we are drilling in on how we're pricing our projects and services because that's going to be a leading indicator to how much total revenue you make in a year. So what's the value and the outcomes that you're driving and is your the time that you're spending and the way that you're pricing in alignment with that value and those outcomes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, I'll talk about this in a second when we get to that slide, but just the healthy mix of both is what allows you to have what you're saying, that stabilizing predictable income as the baseline so that you then can scale with projects is what I'm seeing as probably the healthy balance here. Number of clients did matter, just mentioned that. So you can see people with 1 to 3 clients, the median, again, this is mostly part-time consultants, but the median income there is going to be that 12,000 number. When you go up to 4 to 6 clients a year, this is going to be a much higher median income, 62,000. And then once you get into that territory of 7 to 10, we're looking at 6 figures. I did notice this dip here. I mean, it's not a huge sample size, and it's 11 to 15 clients, but that could be, in my interpretation, this would be a scaling issue. So where you were able to take on 7 to 10 clients, but when you get into that 11 to 15 territory, you're probably like starting to add in team members, trying to build a little bit of a maybe an agency model, and you might get actually stuck having that number of clients. And then once you get to that 16 to 20, you figured out how to grow your team, then you're back up to almost 200,000 in revenue, a median. So, so this is great. So number of clients actually does matter, obviously, and pricing them right is also extremely important. And so we see the 1 to 3 to 4 to 6 total clients is the most pronounced inflection point for increasing your revenue. So another lever you can pull is just adding 1 to 2 more clients. I know your next question is, well, how do we do that? There are ways, it's not that complicated, but we do teach that in our program, how to build a pipeline to fill your client roster throughout the year. So here's where we look at the recurring revenue, and I want to bring up what Brian was saying earlier. People who had 50 to 75% recurring revenue had the highest median income. So that's that 87,000 number. Anyone else, as long as they had some recurring, 25% recurring, 50% recurring, or 100% recurring, you're in that $62,000 median income range. What I see there, well, why would someone who has 100% recurring revenue be lower than 75%? Is that's the kind of person that maybe has 3 strong recurring clients that they treat maybe like in a fractional model. You have 3 recurring clients and that's it. You call it a day. You're not really looking to add in projects. So you're kind of capped. You can't really scale too much further past that if you've taken them on and they've taken up all your hours. And you're not able to contract out some of that work. And you also don't have any bandwidth to add in projects. So that's why I think this really the key here is to have enough recurring revenue that it stabilizes you to then go and experiment with bringing in some projects. Um, Brian, anything to add on that? I think that was the whole of it that I wanted to share.
Yeah, that was great. Let's jump into sales and lead gen.
Got it. Yeah. All right, earnings by sales calls. So if you guys don't do sales calls, that's definitely a sign to start because sales calls are going to help you. It's not as much as project pricing and number of clients. Those are still going to be the highest significance, statistical significances that we've found. But there is a correlation definitely with people who are doing sales calls and their median income. So we did see here that people who are doing, 10, 11 to 15 sales calls a month have the highest median income. But anyone, at least if you're doing one, you're still going to be doing much better than if you're doing none. So that'll get into the conversation in a second here about referrals versus pipeline building and how we can make sure we're having a consistent number of sales conversations a month.
Yeah, that correlation, right, back there, like, isn't surprising. The more sales calls you make, the more clients you book, the the more money you make. But I think where Julia's going here is really interesting, is looking at the total percentage of sales calls that nonprofit consultants make in a month, and literally about 80, what is it here? It's 83%. Oh, it's written here on the slide. 83% of nonprofit consultants are making 0 to 5 sales calls a month. And this is one of those moments when I was going through the data where like signal flare went up, because I just thought, oh my gosh, like if at minimum you can find a way to make 5 to 10 sales calls a month and we can close the gap on the number of folks that are making five or less, like this is the revenue opportunity. Dedicating a percentage of your time to a sales motion where you're prospecting, booking discovery calls, getting in conversation with potential future clients and prospects. Like this is such an opportunity for our sector to A, generate more revenue, but B, make a bigger impact. So I just, for me, this was kind of one of those moments going through the data where like the wind was knocked out of me in terms of an opportunity that's on offer for all of us.
Yeah, it's a lot, it's money being left on the table right now. And a lot of it is too because people, nonprofits are just not aware of all these consultants that are joining this parallel track of labor in the market. So, huge opportunity, guys. If you're not doing sales calls, you're not confident in how to do sales calls, book a call with our team and we'll talk you through it because it's just such an easy growth opportunity. I want to talk about referrals because right now it's a referral game, which makes total sense. If you got into it in the last 5 years and you have a great network, there's no reason that, and I've seen plenty of successful consultants who are just doing referrals only, word of mouth. You can see LinkedIn here, and not surprisingly, is going to be a growing force for lead source. Speaking engagements also came up relatively high. I was impressed by that. I noticed emails quite low. I think that's another opportunity. I think people just aren't building email lists right now. It's not on your radar, but we've seen huge returns from people using email. We use email. And I just think that people are just leaving that on the table as well. RFPs, not as high as you would think. Or maybe, maybe that doesn't surprise me. I hate RFPs. So that's interesting. This on the left here, earning by lead source. People who are only using referrals, median income there is 37,000. Just adding one additional lead source, one pipeline builder, like using LinkedIn, increases your median income to 62,000, based on the results we're seeing. So if you're thinking, well, how should I be marketing? There's a lot of strategies out there. You don't have to do everything. We tell everyone don't do everything, but picking another channel, like consistently posting on LinkedIn or maybe doing webinars, speaking engagements, things like that, could absolutely help you boost your presence, boost your marketing, boost your visibility, which then leads to that increase in sales calls. So we start seeing all these levers going up. And if you know how to price right, that's going to help you as well. So I thought that I was really blown away by that. Right, getting into, oh, Brian, one more thing.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the other factor that I take into play here is just knowing, how many folks are consulting part-time and kind of making that median income of 12,500. And like if you can find, if you are part-time, if you can find like the space and bandwidth to, like Julia's saying, add one other channel where you could generate some lead volume, as opposed to, you know, kind of just using a word of mouth or referral ecosystem to try to build your business, it'll help you scale faster, especially if you're looking to move from part-time to full-time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit about pricing models here, getting more in the weeds. Some interesting stuff here. Again, project based. We asked people here what is their primary way that they price their services. So you see 44%, the primary way is project based, then you have retainers and hourly, and less likely here is packages and day rates. And then over on the right hand side, you can see again that retainer pricing unsurprisingly, for people who have nice monthly recurring revenue from retainers, that they have that higher median income. Day rates came up as second. I don't think a ton of people are doing those, so that's interesting that that came up, but maybe that's for events and things like that. And then you have hourly, project-based, and package pricing. So retainer is going to help you out. It's more predictable. It's larger scopes, longer engagements. That's always going to be a great way to go. We always recommend that people move away from hourly towards project, towards retainer, and so on. So I think that's great to see that the data bears that out. All right, workload and experience. So this is pretty simple. If you work more, you'll make more. 40 hours or more a week, highest median income. So again, those full-time consultants who have taken the leap, have made the transition into full-time consulting, you're going to see more money. You have more capacity, you have more time to work on business development, you have more time to do marketing and things like that, and your capacity is open to take on more clients. So I know there's people who are part-time because they want to be and they're just looking for that supplemental income. And then I know there's people who really want to be full-time consulting, but they just are afraid to take the leap. They're not really sure. But again, there's a couple levers here that we're pointing out that if you just got those ducks in a row, you can really make the switch and go into that full-time where clearly that's where the money is going to be. Earning by years consulting. This was cool. So we saw that it does actually help to stick with it and stay in longer. So the people who are in years 1 to 3, you have that median. Well, first year, 12,500. That makes sense. But right away into 1 to 3, people are in that median bracket of with 62,000 being the median income. So that's really cool to see that jump. After the first year, you've gotten a couple of clients and you're establishing yourself pretty quickly. Years 4 to 6, we're seeing people getting into six-figure territory, 125,000 median income, which is really, really crazy. Um, 7 to 10, same kind of area there, and then back up to that 11 to 20. I did notice here more than 20 years consulting, back down to that 62,000 median. My takeaway there, I've met a few consultants who are, they're incredible. They've been doing this for 20 years. They haven't raised their prices in a long time. They have their kind of stable of clients, they're working with them, and other people are outpricing them or just pricing higher and getting the work. So I have met some consultants in that category. If you've been consulting for a long time, do not be afraid to raise your prices. So I thought that was very interesting. But this really suggests that more time in the market creates a lot of opportunity. And between that 1 year and years 1 to 3, in years 4 to 6, there's really a huge jump in median income. So I thought that was incredible. If you stick with it and you follow how to build a business, it comes. All right, now we're getting into consultant sentiments. This was a really cool section of the report. I was really curious. We've been doing it for 5 years. I was curious if other people are like getting in and then getting back out. We've heard feedback for, not everyone should be a consultant. And we've heard people saying, they try it and then they go back to their full-time job. But as nonprofits are cutting back budget, laying off full-time staff, people are making transitions again to be more flexible, more autonomous in how they work. There's a lot more remote work opportunities. People can sell their skill set instead of their hours to a full-time job. I was just very curious, are people saying that they really don't want to stay in this, or is it growing? And I thought the results here were super positive. First of all, 83% of consultants reported a stable or increasing demand for services. So 40% said it's staying the same year over year. They're seeing that same demand. 42% said it's increasing. So they got in and they're seeing even more demand than when they started, which is excellent. For anyone who's getting started, you're wondering like, hey, is there work out there? Do nonprofits want this? I would say overwhelmingly yes. And our arguments for that have always been that it's great for nonprofits who don't want overhead with adding employees. If they can access high talent for competitive prices, they're going to want consultants coming in. So I thought that was really, really cool. And only 16% said demand increasing, so that's negligible. Satisfaction with consulting. So it was actually fairly positive. 35% saying very satisfied, 35% saying somewhat satisfied, 19% neutral, and only about 10% saying dissatisfied with the career. 75% about of people saying yes, they can intend to continue long term. I think that's a great signal that this is not going anywhere. If you have gotten into consulting or considering getting into consulting, no one is really saying in this, like, yeah, I'm going back to my full-time job. People saying they're likely to recommend it. You have, what is this, 40? Over half said yes, they would recommend it. Some little more saying no, maybe not here. So I think that is also a recognition, like a more mature recognition that this is not like one of those Instagram videos that's like passive income, get rich quick. Like people who are in the in it now, they know like okay, it's still work. You have to have a strategy. You have to do your own marketing. You have to do your business admin. It's not for everyone. I will say that wholeheartedly it is not for everyone. But I am seeing here that the people who have gotten into it, they understand what they're dealing with now. They like it and they plan to stay. So I think that's really awesome to see. This was cool. Common client issues that we asked people, when you're working with a nonprofit, what's coming up? Like where does it break down? Like where do you have issues with your clients? Number one, 35% here is unclear scope or expectations. So, that could be on the nonprofit, but a lot of times I see that as something that the consultant missed the opportunity in the discovery call in the proposal to really be clear. And we teach that very heavily in our mentorship program for how you need to be preparing the scope and preparing the onboarding for the client so that they understand what they're getting, what the timeline is, what the communication plan is. And it's underscored here with the second and third answers being lack of clarity on goals and unrealistic timelines. So if you're going into calls with a potential nonprofit and you're just yesing them to death and saying, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. If you don't have a clear niche, you don't have a clear project packaging, you're going to run into these issues. So yes, nonprofits are a little fickle sometimes, but I do think a lot of this is just lack of experience on the side of new consultants who are unclear on how to properly package their services. But that is where you'd probably see that your engagements have issues. Brian, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, something else we captured, and some of this was through open-ended responses, but another trend that we're seeing is that I think like a point that causes friction is that there isn't like a universal understanding across our clients and our ICP, the nonprofits themselves, on like what is the best approach and methodology in order to have a successful engagement with a consultant. So it falls on the consultant to navigate the expectation settings, the change management, between the difference between how you operate with a full-time or part-time staff member versus a consultant, which again, like it puts more burden on the consultant for change management, education, stakeholdering. But I think it's just like it is kind of the common theme that came up within common client issues. It's
Mhm.
actually an area where like Relatable Nonprofit is looking at, ooh, like how can we actually step in and help the sector on this
Yeah.
front? So I think we're seeing opportunities ourselves around, oh my gosh, how can we help nonprofits be better equipped to engage with and hire consultants so that both industries can thrive?
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that while I have 60 plus people on this call. Does anyone think that would be a good idea? We're talking about developing sort of a resource toolkit for nonprofits and doing some education around that on behalf of our consultant members in our program around, how a typical consulting engagement goes and pricing expectations, communication expectations. So yeah, we have that in the hopper now that we got this report out the door. We can start working on that. But I did see that, like what Brian's saying, that came through that we always tell our members, like, you really need to take control of that one because nonprofits may not have ever heard of working with a consultant. They have no idea how. And I know from people who work full time, like sometimes being hired in a new job, the nonprofit doesn't even do a great job of onboarding you and setting expectations and setting role descriptions and things like that. So they're really going to do even less of that with a consultant. So that's a huge area for opportunity and growth and education, I think. But if anyone has ideas on that, let us know. And top concerns for the future, not surprisingly, reduced nonprofit budgets comes up after the last year with budget cuts and grant cuts and things, federal funding and all of that. Of course, nonprofit budgets are always going to come into play. Economic instability in general. And this is what Brian was referring to. Lack of understanding of the consultant role came up. But something that I noticed that did not really factor in high was competition or AI. You know, two things that you hear about a lot is one, the nonprofit market consulting market is saturated. There's too many nonprofit consultants because your LinkedIn feed has a bunch of nonprofit consultants in it because that's what you're looking at every day. So it makes you think there's like everyone is out here. But people really are not very concerned about competition. And we see that again and again in our program. We have 80 nonprofit consultants working together inside the mentorship. And we did a call yesterday, our live session, and almost everyone was offering very similar services, but they're in different parts of the country. They serve different types of nonprofits. They have different approaches to solving the same problems. So I've never seen an issue where people were competing. And there's just so many nonprofits that need help. So I really liked that. And that people weren't too concerned about AI. I know that's a massive conversation we're not going to get into right now, but um, I think anyone who really knows their stuff, you know that a human element behind the work is going to be necessary to get a lot of this stuff done, even if AI is a helpful tool. So again, not surprisingly, budget is what came up here.
This is just an anecdote from my just my own experience. I just will caveat this by saying like I don't have the data to back what I'm about to say, but it was a sentiment. I've worked in nonprofit consulting for a while. I worked at a pretty notable enterprise firm, before the pandemic for several years, and the CEO of that company, when the pandemic hit, like his ultimate sentiment was that he actually wasn't concerned about what it meant as a consulting agency going into a season of economic uncertainty where nonprofits might have reduced budgets, right? Like that was a season where uncertainty was the norm, was the baseline. Because at the end of the day, like going to a services based consultancy is actually what organizations rely on more when things in our
Yeah.
environment are uncertain. So I think that's my encouragement to say I know that the world feels extremely uncertain right now, no matter where you are, but be assured it does. I don't think that means that the value that you add will go unneeded.
Yeah, I mean, I've had several of the same conversations, and we saw this getting into consulting in 2021. That was, an interesting time, and it's remained interesting for the last few years. But that is overhead and the cost of bringing on full-time employees, I think is underestimated, like how much that costs a nonprofit. And their arguments can be made about having full-time staff versus consultants. Absolutely, there is a place for full-time staff and leadership, of course, but when it comes to accessing like high quality talent for competitive rates and even maybe for a specific period of time. Like if you need someone to come in and set up and build out a new CRM for you, if you need someone to come in, we have people in our program who offer prospect research, surge support at the end of the year. We have people who do succession planning for nonprofits who are going through a leadership shift. Those are all things that maybe your nonprofit would try to put on you as an employee, but if they can bring in a consultant and pay for that expertise, that very high quality work, it's going to cost them a lot less than trying to hire for those sorts of things. So I do think that that's not going to be too much of an issue. But of course, we don't have the data to back that up. We're just interpolating here. And the closer, I wanted to bring this up again because This is the number one question I get is what niche should I pick? Because we are always telling people that we work with, consultants that we work with, that you do want to pick a specialty and position yourself in the market, which I will stand by. That is very helpful. But people always ask, which one? Should I become a major gift fundraising consultant? Should I become a strategic planning consultant? The data does not show any consistent relationship between consulting income and like a specialty or working with a certain type of nonprofit. So it does suggest that while specialty or niche choice may influence positioning, so what you're able to charge and how many clients you're able to take on, your hourly rate, all of those things, and your sales efficiency, it does not reliably predict income on its own. So for anyone that's like really struggling right now about how to niche and how to position, I always tell people pick what you like to do and you're good at doing because those are the things that you're going to consistently show up and do versus people who are like, well, I think they need grant writing, so I'm going to offer grant writing, even though I hate grant writing. That's just always something I'm reminding people. Don't try to do something you hate just because you think it's going to make you more money. The data really doesn't support it. So that is everything that we included today. It was a lot of information. Brian, were you going to add a closing thought?
Yeah, there was just a question. So I just want to also caveat that what we presented here is not all of the findings in full. We kind of
No.
pulled some of the biggest trends, some of the biggest ahas that, what we thought would be most valuable. There is a full, comprehensive 100+ page report that dives in. So I'm going to drop that here in the chat, but I wanted to answer a question that came in through the chat
Yep.
around, hold on. It was, Renee had asked about size of the nonprofits in the study. So we do have a chart on that. So I'll just read this off
Yes.
really quickly. This is the distribution of nonprofit client size. So 22% of consultants serve nonprofits under $500,000 in individual giving revenue. 23% serve a half a million to a million in individual giving revenue. 32% serve nonprofits from 1 to 5 million in individual giving revenue. And then I'm going to lump 5 million to 25 million. That is about 21% of consultants are serving, more upmarket enterprise nonprofits above 5 million in individual giving revenue. So I just
Right.
wanted to make sure that we answer that because we do have that data.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a
Uh,
ton more. Like this is like maybe a fifth of what we have. So there's a lot more, guys. Download the report. Do you want to do a couple questions, Brian? Or I don't know if any
yeah,
more
if
in the chat.
if people have questions, I think we've tried to hit everything that's coming through the chat, but if people have like outstanding questions, like feel free to drop them in. If you have your own insights or things you're curious about, drop them in the chat. We'd be happy to play in the sandbox and speak to them. And kind of maybe while you think about that, we also want to let again, like as a thank you for all of those that showed up today and all of you that lent your voices and your experience to the survey. We want to help. We want to help you build a better business. So, Catalina, one of our co-founders, she's here on the call with us. I don't know if you're here, Kat. You're also welcome to come on stage. No pressure. Um, she is hosting free growth consultation calls for anybody that wants to dive in with her and get some strategic advice around how to build and grow your nonprofit consulting business this year.
Yeah, so
Oh,
Brian's gonna drop that in the chat.
Gene had a
Perfect.
good question. How important is thought leadership LinkedIn speaking? Julia, do you want to speak to what Kat has done on the thought leadership side on LinkedIn?
Oh yeah. So the last webinar we did, and I think we'll probably talk about this in the next one, which by the way, guys, this is just the first, and I think we're doing 10 this year, webinars like this. So we'll have a lot more information to come. But Catalina has built an incredible LinkedIn presence. We worked with a LinkedIn consultant last year and really honed what we were trying to post everywhere. And when Catalina really doubled down and said, I'm going to grow my LinkedIn, I'm going to talk about nonprofit consulting, I'm going to talk about what we do in the sector. And I think I don't know, she's 6 or 7,000 followers now on LinkedIn. She gets just really an incredible amount of engagement. If you want to check out her LinkedIn profile, sort of as a case study of what you can do, she had, I don't know, maybe 400, 500 connections prior to starting this. And it's been about a year of committed growth. So, um, absolutely important to positioning yourself and how helping get visibility, particularly if you don't have a huge network. We did not have huge networks when we started, so that was a great way. We knew we weren't going to be getting a ton of word of mouth referrals. That really has been just a game changer in our ability to access a larger audience. So, if you want to ask Catalina more about that, you can also book a call with her to talk about that.
Yeah, she's like 10x her LinkedIn following, and a lot
That's
of it
crazy.
is just about like it's a blend of like showing up consistently, not only posting, but engaging with others, commenting, adding your own unique point of view. And it just it is like repeatable, but it starts to scale and it hits tipping points. So it's been really powerful. And I not to give too much away in the secret sauce, but a very healthy percentage of people that enroll in the mentorship program here at Relatable Nonprofit come through Kat's LinkedIn.
Yeah, and if anyone's curious, I did mention the mentorship a few times. We are actively enrolling consultants right now. So we built the program 2 years ago in 2024 to support nonprofit consultants who were looking to grow their business. Obviously, when we got started, we knew very little. We learned a lot in our first 2 years, and we did hit over six figures in consulting revenue in our first 18 months. So we decided to put together a program, which is a combination of a community and live coaching sessions and one-on-one support with myself and Catalina. It's a 12-month program that we offer. So if you're interested in that, if you're looking at this and you're like, hey, like I'm charging under $100 an hour, or I just cannot crack the code on how to price my services. I have no idea how to fill my sales pipeline. I have no idea how to run sales calls. I have no idea how to do a scope of work. I don't even know what that is. These are all things we teach in the program. We have templates, we have scripts, we really everything, and we're there to support you through the first year of your business. And we like to make it a year because you really do need that first year's accountability. So I think we have some members possibly on the call. If they're there, give us a shout out. They're amazing. And it's really nice because I think a lot of you are doing this alone. And that's probably the biggest downside in the beginning is you leave your team, you leave your coworkers, and you're working from home and you're doing this alone. It can be very isolating. Um, I think the mentorship program for so many of our members has been a place to find friends, to brainstorm with, to workshop your services with, and just to have an accountability partner. So we're really proud of it. We're growing it this year even more. And we're really, really just so excited to welcome more people in this year. So if you're interested, again, book a call with Catalina. We'll tell you how it works, if we think it's a good fit for you, and how we can help you grow.
Amazing. Well, that is a wrap. Thank you so much, everybody, for spending your time with us this past hour. Again, a thank you and a shout out again to all of the people that contributed to the report. I'll be honest, I contemplated adding all of your names as a thank you to the contribution, but at the beginning of this, we promised that you would remain anonymous. So I was really torn between giving you all public credit in the report. Maybe if an overwhelming amount of you want that, we'll add a bunch of pages with your with a special thanks. But thank you, seriously, it means so much. We've learned so much through the process, and we hope that this is a resource that will help you learn and grow as well. And we are cheering you on into another successful year. Thanks for being with us. And until next time, we'll catch you soon. And we'll follow up after this session with a link to the report. And we'll also make this recording available as well so that you have access to everything we covered here today. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much, guys. Talk to you all soon.